everyone, and welcome to the CHI Diversity Career Fair. I hope you are as excited about this event as I am. And whether you're here as a recruiter seeking that ideal candidate, or you're a job seeker looking for your next great position, you're in the right place. And my comments are specifically for you. I'm going to share with you 5 interview mistakes that almost everyone makes. And they occur on both the recruiter side of the desk as well as on the applicant. So let me set the stage just a little bit. See, this is a very appropriate time for us to be having this conversation and for this career fair to be taking place, because we're coming out from under the confines of COVID. At least we think we're coming out. Every time we think we're climbing out, something pulls us back in. But hopefully we're really coming out this time. And we're fighting against the great resignation. People are resigning. They don't want to go back to their jobs, which actually in some instances speaks volumes about DEI, but it does create great opportunities for other people. So here's a snapshot of what we're working with. Young adults are a significant portion of the adult labor pool. And in January of 2021, the unemployment rate for young adults was about 9%. Now that was 1.5 times higher than the national unemployment rate at that time, which was 6.3%. And it's worth mentioning that the unemployment rate among young adults of color exceeded that 9%. So given that this is a diversity-focused event, increasing the number of employees of color should be top of mind for all of us. Millennials and Generation Z folks will make up about 75% of the global workforce by the year 2025. That is not far away, my friends. Approximately 118 people apply for a single open position, and only 20% of them get interviewed, which comes out to be about 1 in 7. So 1 in 7 of you who apply for positions will get interviews. 47% of the people interviewed fail the interview for lack of information on the company and lack of information on the specific position that they're applying for. 92% of companies use social media to look up the candidate, and 39% of candidates are rejected due to lack of confidence, voice quality, and lack of smiles. So make sure you get the smiles ready. Now, how do you prepare? How do you make sure that you're prepared for the unknown? There are a number of hiring biases that can come into play during this process. And at Turning Point Leadership Group, we teach a course that looks at about 11 of them. We go into depth because we want the recruiters to be aware of those potential unconscious biases so that they can mitigate them and make sure they don't slip into the interview process. And we also think that it's important that applicants are aware of them so that they can think of particular workarounds. So let's say, for example, one of those biases is ageism. And in fact, one of our clients is having us put together some programs on ageism right now. Ageism is starting to be a player, a bigger player in the space in the upcoming months. And so whether you're on the less seasoned or younger side of the ageism spectrum, or the older, more seasoned side, ageism doesn't show favoritism with respect to which end of the spectrum. If you're on that younger, less seasoned side, one of the things you might want to do, be prepared, is to speak about experiences and results. That recruiter is going to be more concerned about what have you done than your age. So you really need to come in strong with results. If you're on the older or more seasoned side, then you want to talk about new innovations. Because if you can wow them with the fact that, yes, I've been in this field for quite some time, but I'm also on top of what's going on and I've been keeping up with the new technologies and the new ways of doing things, then that overtakes the ageism. So be prepared for the unknown. And it really does not matter if the company has a published pro-diversity statement or not. Many companies, I hate to say it, but many companies nowadays on the website speak very highly about their diversity values, but the numbers tell a totally different story. So before I share those 5 interview mistakes that almost everyone makes, I want to take you on a journey with me. I want to tell you a story. It's a familiar story. It takes place in the fictional African country of Wakanda. Maybe there's some connection to the fact that I just came back from a trip to South Africa that I need to speak about Wakanda. I don't know. But Wakanda was central to the movie Black Panther. Black Panther had a lot to say about the experiences of Blacks in America and in Africa. And it also has a lot to say about the foundations of identity, leadership, and righteousness. And these three are important concepts when it comes to talent acquisition. So as I get further into my comments, hopefully you'll see some of those connections. But let's talk about Wakanda and the movie Black Panther. And so let's do a quick recap for those of you who haven't seen it in a while, or perhaps there's some who haven't seen it at all. So in Black Panther, after the death of his father, T'Challa returns home to the African nation of Wakanda to take his rightful place as king. When a powerful enemy suddenly reappears, T'Challa's mettle as king and as Black Panther gets tested when he's drawn into a conflict that puts the fate of Wakanda and the entire world at risk. Faced with treachery and danger, the young king must rally his allies and release the full power of Black Panther to defeat his foes and secure the safety of his people. Now, in that overview in and of itself, if you are a student of DEI, you just heard a DEI message and you may not even recognize it. So let me go back and point out some of the words that I'd like to underscore from that recap. I talked about mettle and your mettle, and that's not MEDAL, that's METTLE, your mettle being tested. If you're from a marginalized group, you understand what it is to have your mettle tested. In fact, there are studies that have shown that women and people of color, and particularly Black women more than any other intersection, has to demonstrate or prove capability and expertise even in our areas of expertise. And I've experienced that myself. I get called in as an expert in my field, and I enter organizations and they want to suggest a different way of getting the job done, or they want to challenge the way we want to go about doing it. Now, granted, it's your company, will do it any way you like, as long as your way is going to produce the results that you say you want. But why call in an expert and then tell the expert how to get the job done? Happens all the time. Something else that came out of that paragraph, we talked about conflict. We talked about putting folks at risk. We talked about rallying allies. We talked about releasing the full power, which could also be translated as potential. And we talked about securing the safety, not only the physical safety, but the psychological and emotional safety as well. So actually, what T'Challa was called upon to do, even in his African nation, was a DEI message. And there are some lessons that we learn in Wakanda, and I'm going to share some of them with you. One of those lessons was to employ the best people for the job. Now, in Wakanda, everyone was utilized according to their talents, whether they were young or old, female or male, Black or white. Nowhere was that more evident than in how they employed women. Women are everywhere in Wakanda. They're staffing the Royal Guard, they're farming, they're advising the king, they're advancing technology, they're operating in the foreign service, they're doing it all. And not only do they hold important roles, but they're fierce, they're intelligent, they're courageous, they're powerful. Wakandan women contribute so much to their society that it makes you wonder how much we could improve our circumstances if we too fully utilize women's talents and leadership abilities. And as a side note, I'll say especially the talents and abilities for those women who might be of Wakandan descent. A second lesson that we learn in Wakanda is to choose leaders based on how well they lead. Now, in the movie, there were three women that really stand out. Nakia, she was a spy. Okoye, she was an army general. And Shuri, she was a teenage technology wizard. They stand out because, as the movie demonstrates, without their input throughout, T'Challa would have been dead multiple times over and over and over again. A third lesson, representation is important. The nearly all Black cast in this Marvel movie gives its audience, its Black audience, space where they can see themselves fully. In other words, representation. And as a side note, it's important to mention that this was the first time in cinematic history that the two most successful films at the box office for a given weekend were both directed by Black directors. One was Ryan Coogler, who was also the co-writer of the movie, along with Joe Robert Cole and the other director was Ava DuVernay for her A Wrinkle in Time. Few more lessons. The fourth lesson has to do with the depth of Black women. I mentioned that Nakia was a spy, Okoye an army general, and Shuri a teenage technology wizard. But there were more women. As I said, women were staffing the Royal Guard, advising the king. They were farming, they were in technology, they were in foreign service, etc. These women sported their natural hair. They wore clothes that complemented their skin tones, and they were not over-sexualized in their costumes. These characters in their entirety redefine what it means to be beautiful. Now, in this country, it's no secret that we've had a very Eurocentric view on what beauty is, so much so that it was just recently that the Crown Act was passed to allow Black women the freedom to wear their hair in ethnic ways without fear of losing their jobs. Who else in any country, anywhere, has ever had to worry about showing up as their authentic selves with all the natural beauty that was given to them by God, creator, or whomever it is that you choose to believe in, and have that be juxtaposed with the fear that you might lose your job? So again, the depth of Black women being able to show up as their authentic selves and kill it, because as I said, the king would have died many times. A fifth one is communal and collaborative power. There was friction among some of the tribes in Wakanda. Friction is a part of human nature. Any country you go to, there's going to be some friction. And there was also this dispute surrounding Killmonger, another main character, Killmonger's vision for justice. All the characters were faced with an underlying question of how to approach conflict. Conflict is real. It happens everywhere, even on the job. So is it better to work through the system, or is it better to dismantle the system? So again, communal and collaborative power. How do the tribes all come together towards the same goal? And the last lesson that I'll share with you, though it's definitely not the last lesson in the movie, but it's related to the one that I just mentioned about communal and collaborative power. And this one is called propping up an unjust regime is not the right thing to do. There comes a time in the movie where all the characters have to choose a side. They must either stand with tradition and the smooth transition of power, or follow their hearts down an uncertain path that could lead to war, chaos, and all kinds of unknowns. Dictators remain in power because good people are too afraid or too blind to resist them. And it's only when people stand up for what's right that things change. So those are 6 of the lessons. Now, you may be wondering again, what does this have to do with the fact that I am about to enter a career fair and make some decisions concerning whether or not I accept a job, or if you're on the other side of the desk, whether or not I accept this application? So it's time for me to share those 5 interview mistakes. And as I said, they are 5 interview mistakes that almost everyone makes. This is how what you're about to enter into relates to Black Panther. So one of those mistakes, and clearly there are lots of them, but I was thinking about consolidating, just doing 5. What are some of the things that would apply and be top of mind for this event? And one of those has to do with lack of relevant research. You heard some of the data I said. People are failing interviews because they haven't done their research. So it's not just enough, though, to research the company. You need to be looking at what are some of the industry trends. What's going on in the healthcare and the pharma world today? What are some of the things that we're seeing? What are the trends that are happening? And where are we likely to be 5 or 10 years down the road? You need to look at the company and its track record, not just in terms of financial performance, that is very important, but you also need to look at what are some of the initiatives that that company is engaged in. Where do they stand? What are some of their company values? Do you align with those values? What's their track record? You need to look at the role. Remember, that was also something they said people didn't know about the specific position they were applying for. Understand the role. How does it fit in to the other functions within the organization? What type of people tend to do well in that type of role? And last but not least, look at the recruiter. If you know the name of the person who will be your recruiter, or someone who's a hiring manager, or anyone in that interview process, Check out their LinkedIn profile. Who are they? What do they stand for? What types of things are they posting about? What are some of the issues that are important to them? So do as much background research as you possibly can. You're also going to look for certain concepts and keywords that are on the website, as well as things that are in the media. What are other people saying about them? What is their brand? What's their reputation? Do they have a pro-diversity statement on their website? Did they make a statement after the George Floyd murder? What position are they taking with respect to medical research and diversity in clinical trials and things along those lines? So lack of relevant research is one of those 5 mistakes. A second 5 of those mistakes would be underestimating bias. Underestimating bias comes into play because remember, we learned from Wakanda that representation matters. We're used to seeing only 1 or 2 women in secondary roles, especially when it comes to leadership. We don't often see lots of women, and particular women of color, and particularly Black women in C-suite level leadership positions. Who do you see when you look at the website and look at the leaders for this company? Yes, you are great. And with all your superpowers, if there have been none before you, are you up for the challenge? And is it realistic to believe that you'll be the first in that position? So I'm not trying to crush your dreams in any way. I'm just being cautious, saying be prepared for the unknown. Ask about the demographics. Do your research, but also ask. And don't hide your differences. Use them for good. Remember, we don't want to prop up an unjust regime. So whatever it is that you bring to the table, whatever your diversity is, wear it proudly. Because if this company truly values diversity and values inclusion, they will value you and what it is that you bring. A third mistake that often happens is focusing on the role before focusing on the person. Now, when an interviewer and an interviewee get together, there needs to be some rapport that's established, and certainly understanding some information, background information from your research, maybe seeing if there's some bias that peeks out at you when you look at the website or the LinkedIn profile and those kinds of things. If that's there, then how are we going to talk through that? How are we going to build rapport in the relationship? So you want to establish something like the why behind the what. You know, what it's easy to understand what job you want, but why do you want it? Why does this particular position interest you? Talk about some shared interests. And again, if you've looked up their profile on LinkedIn, you'll see what some of their interests are and their values. Who are they following? What articles are they reposting, et cetera? You want one another to feel welcome. You need to establish relationship. You see, the reason that T'Challa was able to take such advice from these women in his organization, one of the reasons was there was a lack of bias. We're never totally bias free, but there was a lack of bias around gender, but there was also relationship. He trusted them. In an interview, you're not going to establish trust. I get it, but you need to establish rapport, and you need to be concerned about who the person is. And that's how you get past many of the biases. If all you see is an older woman coming in applying for a job, and you don't know about her experience and how she keeps up with technology and the results that she has had in previous situations, if you don't know what she values and what her interests are, the rapport is being missed. Number 4 of our 5 interview mistakes is focusing on culture fit. Now, you may be scratching your head and wondering why it is that I'm saying it's a mistake to focus on culture fit. When the tribes don't agree, use your communal and collaborative power. See, one of the things that we do in organizations is we will often use, in my opinion, as an excuse, we'll say, just don't think they're the right fit for the team, or they really don't fit the culture. So my question is, if we are trying to change the culture, even if it's just a minor shift to be a little more inclusive, if it's a minor shift to increase our demographic diversity in some area, be it with respect to LGBTQ plus community or people with disabilities or age, whatever it happens to be, the status quo isn't going to get you there. So you want to enter being aware that communal and collaborative power, the diversity that goes into that, is important. And this is the argument of culture fit versus culture add. I tell my clients, don't look for the culture fit, You don't just want more of the same. You want someone who's bringing something new. You want a little bit of attention. You want a little bit of rub. Healthy tension is good because it's what leads to creativity and innovation. So you want someone who's adding something to the culture, not someone who's just like everyone else. And only when people stand up for what's right do things change. So stand up, push back if you're a hiring manager and the slate of candidates that you're being given is not diverse enough. Are we working towards a society that utilizes all our citizens equally, shares our wealth, shows compassion, and chooses our leaders more wisely? What about your organization? Where does it stand on those things? And number 5, and this one may shock you a little bit, but this one is called forgetting the close. One of the things you need to understand, particularly if you're an applicant, is that interviewing is sales. Now, you heard in my bio that I am founder and CEO of a consultancy. For years, I used to resist the fact that I was in sales. I don't do sales. I don't like sales. I don't like selling. I don't like being sold to. I'm not in sales. I got people on my team that do that for me. And it's really only been in recent years that I realized they're all different ways of selling. And anytime that I do something that brings someone closer to being a client of ours or makes them a client of ours, I'm selling. When you're interviewing, you're selling, and the product that you're selling is you. So you need to use your sales skills in the interview process. You need to know what your superpower is and emphasize how it will be beneficial to the organization. That's your culture ad. Why do they need you as opposed to those other 6 people who didn't get the interview? You're the 1 in 7. What do you bring to the table? Get in and sell yourself. And don't just sell yourself as an employee, sell yourself as a leader, because you see, every employee is a leader in some capacity. So demonstrate why you are the best leader for the job. Give an example of a problem that you faced, what you did, how you used your superpower, what the results were, and how and why those results were beneficial. And here's the one that the first time this advice was given to me, it just floored me. I was like, what? You really want me to do that? But it's ask for the job. As simple as those 4 words might be, ask for the job. Now, there's a way to do this. You might want to say to that recruiter, as a result of our conversation, are there any things you can think of that would make me unfit for this position? First of all, you're going to stand out to that recruiter because most people will not ask that question. Number 2, you could possibly get some great information because that recruiter might come back and say, well, you're a little light in this area of experience, or we're really looking for someone who, and so now you have more information that you can then go back and say, oh, well, let me explain that a little bit. Let me provide some additional clarity, and you might give some additional information. In no way is that recruiter going to just say on the spot, well, yes, you've got the job. I mean, that doesn't typically happen. It usually takes 2 to 3 interviews before you get a position. But now you're standing out and you've received some additional information. And if you advance to that next level of interview, you now have some additional information from that recruiter that you can do to close the sale. So do not forget that you are selling. The product is you. As I want to share with you that as you engage in this diversity career fair and the process of interviewing, remember, be your authentic self. Tell your unique story in all of its depth. Value and sell your superpower and ask for the job. Now, if you don't get it, if you don't get passed on to the next level, I want you to celebrate. What? Yeah, I heard you. I want you to celebrate because, see, you were saved from entering a situation that was not for you. So celebrate and know that there's a better fit out there and that you are now one step closer to finding it. So again, congratulations for embarking on this journey, for stepping up and saying, yes, I'm going to explore some new opportunities, whether you're currently employed or not employed. This is an opportunity for you to show your superpowers, to learn more about yourself and about the companies that are being represented. And as I said, I spoke mostly to job seekers, but there was some wisdom in there for those of you who are recruiting as well. So that is the end.